Welcome, everybody. My name is Angela, and I'll be the host of the podcast today. I am sitting here with the beautiful Melissa, founder of Moms on the Ground. Oh, how are you today?
Great. I'm looking forward to giving you or our audience a lot of information.
Yes.
And we are without our
production crew. We are working with very limited crew right now, so everybody bear with us, but we have a lot of information to share. It's very important. I want to start off, I'm going to mention this multiple times. Please, in the links, you are going to find an attached copy of everything that we're going to show today, because I realize that most people are listening, but we have an entire presentation that's been put together and documentation of everything that's discussed today, which you can share with your friends and loved ones. So please make sure after listening to this podcast, you check out the links and read for yourself.
Yes, it's in the documentation is important. It's important to share with other people. It's important not just in the district where we did this public records request, but it's important to note that we've been looking in a lot of different districts, and that we're going to do a later podcast where we teach you how to do these public records requests. But there are a lot of documents that we're not going to be able to throw up on the screen while we're talking. We're going to share a few with you, but there are a lot more records that we will link in.
And if you're totally lost, this is the first time you're tuning in, please make sure to listen to episode number 1, where we give you an overview of what happened on October 18th, where we had a Capo Unified had a district meeting, a school board meeting that Melissa attended. And do you want to talk just briefly about what you saw for the?
Okay, so yeah, that evening I had encouraged lots of parents to come out because this was an important topic. There was a parental notification policy that was put on the agenda for that evening, and it was written by board trustee Lisa Davis, and it was to make sure that parents are informed about what was going on with their kids while they're at school, so that no secrets would be kept. And so this was written in a spirit of transparency with families. Lisa Davis has always had the families and the children's backs, whereas many of these other trustees, I'm not sure what their agendas or motivations are, but they don't appear to be in the best interest of families. And that is evident through the records that I found. But that particular evening, what I was hearing was different from what the policy was about. And I don't know if I'm
Which, by the way, we also published a copy of that parental notification. So please read that as well, so you can follow along with what we're talking about. There was nothing in the policy that related to gender ideology, gender confusion, pronouns, anything. It really was, parents are going to be notified if the child is speaking of suicide, has any mental concerns or health issues, and bullying and sexual harassment. Right.
Correct. And that is so that evening, there were a lot of students that showed up to make public comment. And, we have this policy, board policy 9323, which gives students precedent to speak. You give them priority to speak in the meetings. And so it appeared that someone had coordinated this to block out the public from being heard. And that's a violation of the Brown Act. If you coordinate in that way, that is a violation of the Brown Act. And so what we found in the records later, after the fact, was that the board president had a serial meeting with an intermediary who was a school teacher who had recruited other intermediaries. And so this is called a serial meeting, and that is a violation of the Brown Act. So, but what prompted me to look into the records about this was that the things that the kids were saying did not seem to be their own words. They were not and they seemed to be the words of adults that had told the kids.
Right.
And we're going to show you this.
Actually, I'm gonna have Melissa play this. And again, if you're looking at the link, we have all the recordings. You can also double, fact check yourself and go on YouTube where they recorded the entire meeting. But we do have a recording we'll play right now, just so you know this is not feedback. So it's going to sound a little bit wonky, but what you're going to hear in the background is an adult speaking to the child. And then the child speaks. This is a third grader that was speaking.
This was a third grader that they announced as Ray, and a third grade. But what I want to point out here before you play that is just that, this is a child. You can hear the coercion from the adult happening in the background. So that's what you're speaking to, that, you can hear this whispering from the adult. And so
don't turn your radio off if it comes across. Just give it a second, and then you'll hear what we're talking about. So I'm going to hit play right now. Oh, well, I thought it was going to play, but it's not playing. At least not out loud.
Student at Ladera Ranch Elementary. I don't think it's fair that kids can't feel safe at schools. We should feel safe talking to our teacher. I was scared when I told my parents about changing my pronouns, but it was my choice. No one took it away from me. You cannot choose your child's story.
By the way, I also want to point out that particular child did tell their parents, which is ironic that they're then speaking about not being able to tell the parents that happened. I'm a little bit confused. So anyways,
I just wanted to point out, as you can go to the link to this meeting, you can go onto the Capistrano Unified School District website. That particular time marker on that child speaking, we'll link that also. Yeah. We'll give you information about, but you should listen to all, if you get the opportunity, while you're driving to pick up or whatever, because what was evident to me was that, as I listened to these kids make comment that a lot of them didn't know what they were talking about, that they had been, you could tell that they were given the words to say. They oftentimes referred to this policy as a bill. And we'll go into showing you, what we found in public records of why the kids were calling it a bill. Why they were seemingly speaking verbatim from something, and so, yeah. But this particular child, I think what was really disturbing to me was that after, and we stopped playing it, but you should listen to it all, because the adult says to the child that, do you hear all the people cheering for you outside? So, this is the thing, is that, I really think that this is psychological abuse. I think that it's, because these are children that, as we've mentioned before, their brain is not fully formed. And these are adults that are, putting them up to this in a public setting. If this was truly, is this a family, to me, like, this is a family issue. This is not like something that.
Well, make it personal. So I had, as a child, experience just continuous dramatic trauma in our family. Our family blew up between being the age of 7 until about 15. And at the end of it, my mom was just, emotionally worn out. And I was seeking love and attention, right? I would find it anywhere. And by the grace of God, I ended up being in an environment where friends' parents kind of, blew wind in my sails, right? Kind of lifted me up. And I had teachers along the way that kept saying, you could do it. You're doing a great job, But when I hear these stories and when I read, which we're going to show you, I put myself in that situation, because that would have been me. If someone's saying, oh, do this, or we we see you, we recognize you, and pushing me even further away from my family. I don't care what they were selling. I would have been buying it.
Well, and the problem with this is that, with all this gender stuff is that, and gender identity things in the school, which you'll see in the records how these teachers at school were really promoting this, and that there are outside parties that are, before we go to the that there are outside parties that are interfering here, and that there's a conflict of interest that's happening for sure.
Yeah.
And, to your point, Angela, I had a similar situation growing up. And, my mom was a single mom. She had addiction issues. And, there were things that were happening in our household. And I would have been one of these kids that might have found my way into one of these groups. And before I know it, swept up in this and potentially then, changing gender. But so to me, this is really dangerous. And this is why, I think that parents, because it's a small, organically, transgenderism is a small percentage of the population. So, in a school, when you're making the decision to do something in a public school, in a public thing, typically that's 51% of the people wanting something in a particular way, right? Like you're not modifying everything for like a small number of people. And so, I think that the presence of, seeing these records with these, centers that are, coming to campus and these types of things, it adds this piece to it that is quite scary, I think, for the reasons that we're talking about of like, how kids can get hung up in this. But, what happened to me that evening was, hearing these comments and realizing that the comments didn't match like what the policy itself said. Right. And so that I could see that there was a maneuver going on. I could see, I suspected that there was an exploitation of board policy 9323, which gives the students the priority to speak. And so then I decided to ask for public records. And so in the records, I find that is exactly precisely what happened. And so the deck got stacked, 2/3 in opposition. And this was a cooperation between a trustee on the board who is the president of the board, and having, serial meetings with intermediaries who had serial meetings with other intermediaries. So this is a Brown Act violation. A Brown Act, I should explain to you, that is a set of rules that an elected body, that they need to follow so that they're not having, meetings behind closed doors, substantive conversations where the public isn't privy to, because the public is always supposed to be participating in this deliberative process and in the decision-making process. But in this situation, we had this maneuver happen where, the parents were kept out. I mentioned in the last, in episode 1, that there were hundreds of parents there. And, for me, I had invited tons of parents to come, and they were there. There were hundreds and hundreds of parents there, but they did not get an opportunity to be heard. And so the way that this unfolded, it infuriated me, because people spent their time. Many of them showed up at 3:00 in the afternoon. That this thing wasn't over until 10. So they had been there all of these hours, were prevented from speaking, and I was furious. So I decided to ask for these records, and lo and behold, in the records we can see this coordination, and so we'll go into that. But I wanted to give you kind of an overview of what the Brown Act is. And, there is a thing where, the using teachers or agency employees as an intermediary, like that's prohibited, so it's different from like a parent contacting a trustee and organizing in some way. These people are set up on the campuses. These are what they call GSA leaders. This one particular intermediary is like the head of this No Place for Hate group. And, what's interesting is how much the parents were, the narrative about the parents were, that they were called hate groups, and we'll show you, we'll show you like the things that were created that basically, coerced the kids, you know. And to me, again, this is emotional psychological abuse when you are giving a kid a story that is not truth, but you're manipulating them for your own adult purposes and agenda, you know. And so, you know, to evoke such outrage and emotion from these children, and cast parents and people who, you know, are their guardians into this negative light. And then, you know, you'll see all the ways they were recruited to do so.
And I'm going to show you. I mean, look, you're playing on the mind of an adolescent person, which is designed to want to break away from the parent fold, right? So for those of you that are just listening, you know, you'll be able to see this on slide 43, but this was sent out to the kids, and it's in bubble letters, and it's cute. It's got, you know, I mean,
starburst.
It catches my eye, and in big black bold letters, against their will.
It's here's another thing, is that this particular, if you can, I forget what date that was sent, but it was, you can see that the teacher who created this, her name's Kelsey Torres. She's actually an English teacher at Aliso Niguel High School, and she is the No Place for Hate lead, and she's also a GSA, which, you know, GSA, or like the lead teacher for this GSA, which means Gay Straight Alliance or Gay Sexuality Alliance. And different districts, it's a different acronym, but she is the lead for that. And so you can see, you know, one of the things we're also going to put in the link are the communications between Krista Castellanos, who is the board president of Capistrano Unified School District, her communications with Kelsey Torres, who is a teacher at Aliso Niguel High School, and the fact that Krista Castellanos knew that Kelsey Torres was using her position as a teacher, as well as, you know, the leader of these groups, to basically recruit kids to stack the deck against the parents. And so, you know, there are plenty of emails and documents that show their exchanges, but then they take to cell phones. So Krista Castellanos, when Kelsey Torres asks her for advice on, you know, the October 18th meeting, as well as a meeting that took place on October 4th, like, should she organize, or, you know, can you advise me on this? Because she wants to pack the room with people, right, to oppose the parental notification policy. And so, you know, Krista Castellanos was well aware. And rather than saying, you know what, Kelsey, it's inappropriate for me as a trustee to advise you in this way, or anything to that effect, or for you as a teacher, an agency employee to, you know, recruit in this way is also inappropriate. That's not what happened. She basically said, you know, call me on my cell phone, and gave the cell phone. So you'll see the document showing that as well. So. And then from there, this teacher from Aliso Niguel, she then recruits other teachers, other GSAs on other campuses. And what's interesting, if you go back to the YouTube video from the October 18th meeting and you listen to the comments that the kids made, they were from predominantly 3 high schools. And what's interesting about that is that there were 3 trustees that in the beginning of the meeting, when they were trying, you know, having this discussion about, you know, how long they were going to hear public comment. What's kind of fascinating about this is that a motion was made by Gila Jones, and her district is Capo Valley High School, and then it was seconded by Michael Parham. Oh. But the reason I'm telling you this is that he's the trustee for San Juan Hills, and then Krista Castellanos is the trustee for the area of Aliso Niguel High School. So the reason I'm telling you that is because, you know, Krista Castellanos opens, you know, this discussion about comments at the meeting. She says that we're going to, you know, we have to go by board policy 9323, which gives the students priority to speak. Then the motion is made by Gila Jones, who is the trustee for Capo Valley High School, and then it's seconded by Michael Parham. And what's interesting to me is that these students, they predominantly came from San Juan Hills, Capo Valley High School, and Aliso Niguel High School. So all of these places that these trustees who set the table for, the vote for the time for comment, all of that. So there's a lot of, what do they call that? Prima facie, I think is what it's called. Like on face, this looks like,
Well, it looks like going to court and having your judge already meeting with the defense attorney and having an outcome before the trial has already begun.
Correct. And, Michael Parham, there's some video of him from a different meeting where he's talking about how, that was a show. But he's talking about, someone else putting on a show. But he was a part of a show, but it was part of the show that he put on. So, it's, when you see all of these records, it's really infuriating.
Yeah.
It's really eye-opening.
But to see it in writing, correct, I feel like is the ammunition that you need to get people to wake up and start listening to what we're saying. Because I do find, again, you've been doing this a lot longer than I have, but I know when I try to share the knowledge that I have, I feel like people are looking at me like I have a third eye. You know what I mean?
Well, and the whole story starts to make sense. Like when I showed this to you, when I showed the presentation to you and I showed you the documentation.
And while you're talking, I'm going to show this on the screen.
If you can bring that other flyer back up again, the other one, I wanted to make a point about that. It was slide 42.
Yep.
So when I was showing this information to you, Angela, it was, it was hard to get through because you kept stopping me and commenting. And there's so much, because when you see it in the black and white, when you see the email exchanges, when you see the coordination that went on, and again, we're going to link all of these documents so that you can look at them. But I wanted to just point out about this particular flyer that, this was created by Kelsey Torres, as you can see, and it has a QR code, but it says that this policy is not yet fully written, but there were all of these things that the kids were told about what the policy said.
Yet, even though they didn't know that it was actually written.
Correct.
They were making it a statement and instead it was an assumption.
The policy itself was not able to be, was not available for anyone's view until October 13th. So.
Right. So I'm going to show you, this was sent out. Now that original slide was sent out prior to the release of the policy, which I want to say was October 13th. So they really had about a week where they could have changed course, right? When they realized the verbiage wasn't in there, but instead they doubled down.
Right. And there's also emails about that we'll include in the links, where you see that, this is a slideshow that we're looking at right now. That was created and it was shared with the GSAs on different campuses within the district. It was shown to kids in order to recruit them to speak at the school board meeting. And, one of the things about this was that this was created in advance of the written policy being available for anyone to view. However, there are emails that say that, that show, that when the policy came out, that that there is a person that we can't determine if she's an employee, if she's a student, but she indicates to one of the intermediaries that she has made the changes accordingly. So this was the final product, like what you're looking at right now was the final product, even after the actual policy was written, even after where, there's absolutely no language in the Capistrano unified proposed policy. There's no language about sexuality or gender. Okay. So, but they're saying that this is the exact same policy. They continue to engage these kids in this fear mongering. They can you scroll down a little bit more there? So this is what they wrote: a policy that fundamentally dehumanizes children. So I want you to go back up the other direction, if you would, please, Angela.
And to finish that, it says, by saying that children are the domain of their parents.
Correct. And so but at the very top of this this is a slideshow that was created, as I said. And at the very top of this, it says that, let's see, it's speaking about a bill. So
Forcing out policy.
okay, so right there, you can see that they're talking about it being a bill. They're saying originally Bill AB 1314. So when you do listen to the recording of this meeting, you hear the kids calling this over and over again. They call it a bill, and it's not a bill; it's a policy. But they were shown this slideshow. So there are kids who are verbatim using the words from this slideshow. And again, I think that to manipulate a child in this way is emotionally abusive. It's definitely psychological abuse. This particular slide you have here that says, if enough of us attend or choose to speak, we can shut out hate groups completely. So, that was the intention, was not, to frame the public as a hate group. The intention on the next slide, you can see that they say that you need to get there as early as possible. There are slides that say, if we show up in numbers, we can shut these people out, and so it's a manipulation of these kids. The slideshow was not reflective of what the policy actually said. And even after the emails confirmed that they had indeed, looked at the policy and made, quote unquote, made changes accordingly, they still kept that slideshow and continued to promote it and show it to kids. There was even a gathering actually at Aliso Nagel High School in person in advance on October 13th from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. We're showing you this slide now. It's really sophisticated. You got the QR codes that has email information. You got
It has a cute little ghost that says "boo."
And so they're going to have like snacks and movies, and but this was to coordinate to get speakers, and the goal was to take up the time. And so on the next slide that you had there, which was a couple of more down, this is what comes up for one of the QR codes. This is a speaker sign-up sheet. And as you can see on this slide, it says that, the GSA can help you prepare your comment if you don't know what to say. So these are, again, adults giving the kids words. They've given them a story. They've given them a narrative about, what the policy was about. So
it's just unbelievable. And so we could probably do 5 hours on this. There's so much to talk about. There's so much in these slides and what Melissa was able to dig up. Again, we said this in the first episode. We're just two moms. I am getting increasingly frustrated when I talk to people and they, again, kind of assume that we're not factual. Correct. With the information, and what we've been able to pull actually shows that. And I'm sorry, but if you're going to talk to my child, please come with the full story. Well, I mean, first of all, I want to know about it, but that's,
well, you said me
first,
but you wanted, that it shows that, like, what it shows is that we have the facts, and that you cannot, like, these are public record. You yourself could ask for them. We're going to be providing the documents for you to look at. I am someone who, I always take everything with a grain of salt, and I want to research into it, and I want to understand it, and I want to know what went on. And that's like why I did this. And this was literally reading hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of communications. And what we most definitely see is a coordination between trustees, between and with the teachers as intermediaries. And one more thing that I just wanted to touch on is that, there was also a leak, about the parental notification policy that took place. And one of the trustees who's actually in my area, he said that he's going to get his people there and that there will be a brawl, physical threatening of parents, so I had parents that said that they didn't want to come because they were concerned, for their safety. This is ridiculous. This is, the whole point of having governing bodies is so that the public can participate and be part of the decision-making process. And this was absolutely prevented here.
Yeah.
So, we're going to do another part to this.
And I don't think that they're protecting children.
No,
I think that they use that as a tagline.
Well,
But I feel like quite the opposite is happening just by the verbiage that they're using. I mean, let's face it, nobody wants a child to be harmed. There is no hate in our heart. I don't hate anybody. I don't know why that word keeps getting thrown around, the hate group. What I feel like we're trying to do is actually protect children
and educate parents, because it's very easy just to like dismiss this, and because life can be more pleasant that way, right? To just say like, oh, that's not happening, and then you can go along your happy way. But like, it is happening, and it's it's disturbing. The trustees that are sitting on this council, the larger majority, the ones who voted no for parental notification, they do not have the children's best interest at heart. I find later in records, and we'll do another podcast on that, but like, their reasons, because everyone is always like, why, what's the why? Well, we're going to tell you the why. We're going to show you the why with the documents. But I think we'll probably end this episode, and we're going to come with part 2 of this, because it wasn't just the exploitation of the students. I want to also speak about the interference from organizations with conflict of interest that are outside of our community that were there that evening and prevented the public from being heard. So
you start peeling back that onion layer, you just never know what you're going to find. So thank you for those that have hung in with us so far. I also want to apologize if we were all over the map. We are just trying to piece this all together. But I encourage you, I urge you to just take a look at the presentation that Melissa so kindly put together for us. And if you guys have any questions that we could press on further, please just reach out to us, momsonthebrown.ca on Instagram.
DM us. Yes, and thank you.
That's it. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful day.